and just talking about those things. So how that impacts my business, I mean, it impacts everything. It impacts my business, my family, my relationships. It's really the foundation for any, slither of success that I may have encountered this far.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Entrepreneur Fit. I'm your host, as always, Jared Lane. This week, our special guest host is Luke DeGrossi. Luke, welcome.
Hey guys, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh no, Luke, it's my pleasure. Really excited for you to be here with us this week. So Luke is a co-founder of Pioneer Communities. Luke, can you tell us about Pioneer Communities, like the basis, the concept, the relationship you have with the other co-founder? Would love to hear about it.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, Pioneer Communities is a private equity firm. We're headquartered here in New York, and we're primarily owners and operators of manufactured housing communities, also known as mobile home parks. So we own a couple parks nationwide with our partners, and we also dabble in other asset classes as well, such as multifamily, light industrial. We're staying active. We're primarily providers of affordable housing. My business partner, Nick, and I, we met like probably 3 or 4 years ago. We became really good friends. We were both working, in the corporate world. Each of us kind of had this entrepreneurial bug and just decided to make the jump about 18 months ago and co-founded Pioneer. And here we are today.
It's awesome. Love it. So I know you told me you like to personally start your day out early. What time do you typically start out your day, and why is that so important for you to kind of get the jump start?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my day starts at 4:30 in the morning every day. Sometimes with an alarm, sometimes without. What I'll do is I'll have a pretty dynamic kind of morning routine. Most of it centered around just spiritual growth. So I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of writing between the hours of 4 and 7:30. I do a lot of meditation, a lot of prayer, and that's kind of my time in the morning to just get right and set the mood for the rest of the day.
As far as like your favorite books or like what you're reading right now, what book are you reading right now at the moment?
Yep. So the way that I do it is I don't just read one book. I'll have call it like 15 books that I'll just like go through, right? Like, so every morning I'll read like a little excerpt, or I'll read a chapter, however it's structured. Like right now, there's a couple like key ones that are just always in the rotation. Like I read the Bible every single morning. There's a couple daily meditation books that I read every single morning. And then I'll throw like Ray Dalio's Principles is always there. I read that every morning.
Have you ever read a book called That One Thing?
I have not. No, I'll have to add that to the list. What's that about?
So basically, in a long story short, the primary function of that book is, the author is describing, hey, every day you need to be able to choose and block out time, let's say 4 hours a day where you focus on the one thing that's important for you to make you successful, right? Whatever the case may be, whatever you do, is like you primarily should be focusing on that one thing for 4 hours a day. You block off the time every day. It's that important. You have no interruptions, no distractions. So you put your do not disturb on your phone. It's blocked off.
I've read a similar concept, and it's probably based off that book. I think it was actually discussed in a podcast that Tim Ferriss talks about in Tools of Titans, where to be truly effective, you really only have like 3 or 4 hours consecutively in your day and in your bandwidth, really, where you're able to truly focus on a task at hand. And so instead of breaking it up into like a 20-hour day or a 12-hour day, you're more effective just focusing on like your top 1 or 2 tasks and just allocating that one little chunk of time. And I've been actually doing that, and I can speak to that. I think it's been incredibly effective. So definitely want to read that for sure.
Yeah, no, it definitely helps. That's what I've seen. So now you really kind of just touched on, like, with our viewers, and I know we've had this conversation, that you're very spiritually, and mentally kind of in tune. Can you like talk more about that? Like, how does that help you, kind of like during this time, like just like with your career and, with Pioneer Communities overall?
Well, let me preface by saying that I am not spiritually in tune or mentally in tune at my baseline. That's the reason why I do the things that I do, is so that I can attain a higher level, I guess, of clarity and direction. But what I do, I guess, and to answer your question, those things that I do every day, I do them daily. And I find that when I do them, they might not sound like they're directly contributing to my work, right? Because I'm not actually like underwriting deals in that 3 hour time period, or I'm not speaking to owners. But what I can say is that in that 3 hour time period, when I dedicate that time to myself, and to growth, I am a much better employer. I'm a much better person to work with. I'm far more productive throughout my day. The clarity that I get from that 2.5 to 3 hour window each morning is absolutely priceless.
Now, are there some days where you're not able to do what you want to do, like as far as like achieving that meditation, and like do you see that it offsets your day to day?
Yeah, right. And like that's kind of something I've been working on. My girlfriend, for instance, likes to stay up late. And we had this long conversation the other day, and she's just like, well, you do all these things and you have this really strict routine, but it's only serving you. And I was like taken aback. I was like, like you're so right. And so it's easy for me to like be super disciplined in one area, but then I need to look at every other area as well, because I can be very lazy in maybe like my relationships or my friendships or my family relationships or any other thing that doesn't directly serve me, right? Like it's easy for me to be like, yeah, well, I'm super disciplined in my spirituality and my gym life and
Right,
my work life. Okay, those three things directly affect me. And
right.
so I've been trying to like be more flexible with that. So Saturdays and Sundays, I do not have like a structured wake up time, and it's not because I don't want to, but it's simply to try to have more of a balanced approach to it, because I believe that routines, when not used for the right reasons, can also become imprisoning.
I like that. I mean, it's a good mindset. I mean, you have to do is going to be like an equal balance, especially if you're in a relationship. A really great question I wanted to ask you, Luke. If
Hmm.
you could have 15 minutes of anybody's time today that's alive, like somebody that maybe could be a mentor, could be anybody, who would you choose and why?
Honestly, I'm reading, like I said, this book by Robert Iger right now, and he wrote a book called The Right of a Lifetime, and I've been reading it, and it's incredible, and I'll tell you why I'd like to sit down with Robert. So he has this extremely humble sense to the way that he does business, and I love how he just started at the total bottom. Like he didn't come from a family of means. He just kind of worked his butt off and got to a place where he was pretty much next in line to become the CEO of Disney. And he got there by, essentially working like odd jobs. And it's just incredible looking back, like even in Phil Knight's autobiography, Shoe Dog, like looking back and seeing how like every single stepping stone was just lined up. How the Nike swoosh came to be, how the name Nike came to be. And like the same thing here with Bob Iger. Like I'd love to just sit down with the guy and just pick his brain a little bit.
Interesting. Shoe Dog. That's a book I need to pick up. I haven't read it yet. One thing I wanted to touch on with you, I know we've spoken about it, and I think the online community, any of your Instagram followers may already be aware of this. But right now, you have been sober for how long?
A little over 5.5 years.
5 years, 5.5 years. Could you talk about your sobriety? How it came about, kind of like the quest to become sober. Like, how has it impacted your overall lifestyle, your relationship? Just pioneer communities, how it's made you more successful. If you don't mind talking.
Mm-hmm. Great question. First of all, I mean, pioneer communities would not even be a thing had I still been drinking and actively doing drugs and everything else that I enjoyed doing for a number of years. When I, was out there drinking and drugging the way that I did, there was no sense of waking up early. There was no sense of growth. It was a very self-centered mindset around how do I get out of myself in the quickest way possible.
Mm,
And it doesn't really matter like who I hurt in the process, who I lie to. It was a very self-seeking type of life. And what I can say is, I mean, I hit kind of like a spiritual bottom of sorts, if you will, about 5.5 years ago, and just got to a point where, like, I mean, to be perfectly frank, like the alcohol and the drugs weren't even working anymore. Like I had gotten to a place where they honestly just weren't even doing the job that I had originally intended them to do, which was honestly to get myself out of me. I had a deep sense of inadequacy and insecurity rooted in me from a very young age. And the alcohol and the drugs seemed to be the solution to that inadequacy for a number of years. And then they kind of just stopped working. Not to mention, the numerous like consequences legally outside of the courtroom, just consequences left and right that were piling up. But I think I'd gotten to a place where I was just like, all right, like enough is enough. So I surrounded myself with a group of guys who had things that I wanted, namely sobriety and good lives and jobs and friends and families. And I just did as I was told. I didn't care how uncomfortable it required me to get, how vulnerable it required me to get, which is why I'm grateful you asked the question. Because vulnerability, I embrace it today. I have nothing to hide. And, I had to just get really, really intimate with my feelings, my emotions, how I was feeling, why I was feeling that way, and just talking about those things. So how that impacts my business, I mean, it impacts everything. It impacts my
Right.
business, my family, my relationships. It's really the foundation for any, slither of success that I may have encountered this far into my journey.
Oh. And I know that was like a deep rooted question, and I really appreciate you sharing that information,
Sure.
personal information, for myself and for the viewers. But it's an amazing turnaround, and keep at it. I wish you, another 50, 60 years of sobriety, and
Thank you.
continue going. So that's great. I have this question for you that I love to ask all our special guests. For any like entrepreneur, founder, CEO, someone running any size organization, what message would you have for just one viewer watching, that, hey, like this is being spiritually and mentally and physically involved for your own well-being is like hyper important just overall for your business.
To somebody who might be out of balance a little bit, I would say to just like get down to root causes and conditions. Like what are your motives? I mean, if you're out of balance and you're eating like crap and you're not taking care of yourself, like why? What are your motives? Are you
Right.
thinking that if you work that extra 2 or 3 hours as opposed to getting a decent night's sleep that you're going to achieve that goal faster? Maybe, but look at that. Like, are you going to be happier over the long term and more productive over the long term if you do get those extra couple hours of sleep and then dedicate an hour of those 3 hours to maybe go work out and take care of yourself and clean up your diet? And what I would tell anybody is like, try it for 30 days, like try it for 90 days. If you hate it and you're getting worse results than you were when you were staying up all night and eating like crap, go back to it. Like that's available to you, but try it. Like, don't rob yourself of the opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah, great message. And, we really appreciate you, being on the show today, Luke. I think that's all the time we have here for Entrepreneur Fit. Thank you so much again for, being with us and sharing your insights and value. So, yeah, thanks everyone for watching this episode of Entrepreneur Fit. Until the next one.